We were taught that Canada protects people, that the justice system is fair, that social services help families, that police investigate abuse. But that's not what we lived. For First Nations people, the system only moves when it can punish you. It does nothing while you're suffering. It does nothing while you're asking for help. It does nothing while the damage is happening. And when you finally break under the weight of everything you've lived through, that's when the system shows up. Not to help, but to control you. And it didn't start with us. Some of the harm in my family didn't come from institutions, it came from inside the home. My mother grew up with a father who was abusive. He was white. Her mother married him voluntarily, because at the time, it may have seemed like the smart move for survival. They were mistreated by both groups of people, white and First Nations. And like many people from that generation, my mother chose not to talk about everything that happened. Not because she was hiding something from me, but because the memories were too uncomfortable to revisit. I can't speculate beyond that. I can only respect her silence. What I do know is this: when she needed help, the RCMP didn't protect her. They didn't protect mixed-race families. They didn't protect First Nations children. The same RCMP who ignored our cries for help were the ones who took Indigenous children from their homes and delivered them to residential schools. There are documented photos of the handcuffs they used on those children. That's not protection. That's not safety. That's not justice. Every few years, the government announces a new policy. A new reform. A new promise to fix the system. But when you look at the news, the reports, and the lived experiences of Indigenous people, the truth becomes clear. The system hasn't changed. It just learned how to make the failures sound better. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission released 94 calls to action. Most remain unfulfilled. The National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls released its final report. The action plan that followed was delayed and underfunded. The Canadian Human Rights Tribunal ruled that Canada discriminated against Indigenous children. The government received over 30 non-compliance orders. The RCMP announced reconciliation initiatives. But Indigenous families continue to report slower response times, ignored abuse reports, and investigations that go nowhere. These aren't old stories. These are ongoing failures. We were taught that the system protects people. But for First Nations people, the system only moves when it can punish you. When you're being abused, nothing. When you're scared, nothing. When you're asking for help, nothing. But the moment you break under the weight of everything you've lived through, that's when the system finally shows up. Police cars. Handcuffs. Court dates. Charges. The system that refused to protect you suddenly has all the time in the world to punish you. And that's not justice. That's abandonment followed by control. Trauma becomes part of a family. Part of a generation. My father didn't talk much about what he went through. But he did tell me one thing. His father was abusive and mean. So when the RCMP came to take him to residential school, he said he didn't mind being removed from his home. But whatever happened there, it came home with him. He was abusive to us. He once broke my oldest stepbrother's arm with a block of wood. No charges were laid. And when I was being beaten and starved, I ran away. I ran away a lot. Most of the time, I ended up in front of a social worker, who was also my uncle. And instead of protecting me, he kept letting his sister take me back. I don't know if anything I said was ever written down. I don't know if a single report was ever made. What I do know is this. Every time I ran for help, I was sent right back into the home where the abuse was happening. That's how trauma becomes generational. Not because Indigenous families failed, but because the system refused to intervene. At every single step. Across Canada, Indigenous children reported abuse and were ignored. Indigenous women reported violence and were dismissed. Indigenous families begged for intervention and got nothing. The RCMP has a long history of failing to protect Indigenous people. From taking children to residential schools, to ignoring missing persons cases, to dismissing abuse reports as runaways. Social services weren't any better. Indigenous parents were judged more harshly. Indigenous children were returned to unsafe homes. Case files went missing. Calls for help were brushed aside. My experience wasn't an exception. It was part of a much bigger truth. The systems that were supposed to keep us safe were the same systems that kept sending us back into danger. The harm doesn't stay in the past. It shows up in the present. In the bodies, minds, and lives of the people who survived it. For me, the cost was growing up in a home where violence was normal. Where fear was normal. Where running away was the only way I knew to protect myself. And every time I reached out for help, the system sent me back. I made mistakes of my own. Mistakes I'm ashamed of. Mistakes that hurt someone who didn't deserve it. I'm not telling this story to make myself look perfect. I'm telling it because the harm that shaped me didn't stop with me. These are things that cannot be undone. And people deserve better than this. This story isn't easy to tell. It isn't clean. It isn't simple. The system failed my parents. It failed me. And it continues to fail Indigenous people across this country. This story isn't about blame. It's about honesty. It's about accountability. It's about naming what happened so it can't be denied anymore. Because the harm done to Indigenous families isn't ancient history. It's happening now. It's happening today. You can't fix what you refuse to acknowledge. You can't heal what you won't name. You can't change a system that still believes it's working. This story has to be told. Not for sympathy. Not for forgiveness. But because silence is how the harm continues. And I'm done being silent. People deserve better. They always did. And the system needs to change. Not with apologies. Not with promises. But with action. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you being here. Hope you're taking good care of yourself today. If you want to hang out again, I'll see you in the next one.